been a while since we've been able to actually sit down and talk to each other for a while, Brian.
I know, it's been a couple months. Both of us went to Florida, separate times. You were gone for a month, but, now we're back.
I know, but I feel like at this point you could agree the warm weather is a lot better than the cold weather in New England.
I would rather much be in 87-degree weather, which I was in for that entire weekend, that I was in Florida instead of this 40s, 30
I was down there for a month, and it still felt like one day once I came right back to that crummy Massachusetts weather.
And those tans are starting to fade away too. It's not great.
Man, my quads are starting to match my calves, and that's not a good look. But Brian, while we've been gone, the whole period of free agency has just been falling out, making impact. Honestly, nothing great, I feel like, for fantasy, but things have been rolling. We got to discuss them. So, the intro, as it typically goes, I'm John Burke. I'm your monotone master. Across from me is Brian Tambo, the fantasy foreseer. You can find us on social media. Our TikTok and Instagram is at whyyourwrongffb. You can also find us on Twitter at yourwrongffb. And as always, we're going to continue on with this free agency fallout. Since all the news today is going to be news about free agency, our news segment is actually pretty short, but I just want to lightly touch on it. All I can ask you today right now, Brian, is what's on the menu? Clearly not Deshaun.
Clearly not Deshaun.
I think the tally right now, there's 22 lawsuits against them.
I honestly don't even know what's going on with Deshaun Watson because I feel like every single time I look at my phone, there's a new update on how Deshaun Watson was filed a lawsuit against him. And it's just piling up so much to seem that he might not even ever touch the field at this point.
Right, because at first it's what is the NFL going to do? Because has the NFL said anything yet? I feel like they're really just waiting to see what the court says before they make their decision.
Well, I know that Houston, the police department, they just filed an investigation against them. So once you got the entire city behind you and they're all investigating you, along with all the lawsuits that were put against them, I don't think this is going to end very well for him.
Yeah, I don't see Deshaun playing football this year. Maybe not for a few years, if any.
We'll see what happens, but I think he's in a load of trouble.
Yeah, but let's quick look at the new and not improved Texans offense. Quarterback Tyrod Taylor. Your running back room David Johnson, Mark Ingram, and Philip Lindsay.
The running back core really isn't that bad. And Tyrod Taylor is one of those guys that comes in. Will he get hurt or lose his job somehow? That's just a Tyrod Taylor story.
Right.
But he probably could make a little bit of noise. But that defense is just so bad. I don't even think that they can make up for the offensive stunts that they have over there.
Also, their receivers, Brandon Cooks, Kiki Kuti, and Moncrief.
So, yeah, that's just not good.
And you know who their tight end is?
Darren Fells?
I think it's Atkins right now is the main one. So it's
Atkins. I think they mix between. I feel like those are the guys that you plug into your fantasy football lineup and you're like, okay, can you get me 20 yards and a touchdown?
Yeah.
And if not, then he's getting you 1 point.
Exactly. But out of all those fantasy, is there any real fantasy value in Houston this year?
No. There is zero fantasy value. I mean, maybe you can take David Johnson because they're going to run the ball with him 30 times a game. But I think signing Philip Lindsay is going to get a lot more carries there as well. I mean, Lindsay's a pretty good running back, but then again, do you really want to trust David Johnson or Lindsay on a team that's going to be losing and playing from behind and have to pass the ball? Probably not.
Right, and Philip Lindsay last year, he had 6 receptions all year.
Yeah, so David Johnson is a receiving back, so he's probably the only guy I would be willing to take. And maybe Brandon Cooks is a deep bench guy, but other than that, no.
But it's just for me, it's hard because it's okay, David Johnson was so consistent last year. He's always going to get you 10 points. The new head coach brought in Mark Ingram to be his coach room guy. So Mark Ingram gets touches and Philip Lindsay gets touches. Is David Johnson still going to be that 10-point guy? Is he going to be a 5-point guy?
I mean, I just don't think you even touch it. If you even have the opportunity to take David Johnson or you have the opportunity to take, I don't even know where he's falling in drafts right now, I would take the other guy 10 times out of 10. The guy who's getting the more workload, I would take that guy over David Johnson because you just don't even know. And there's so many question marks.
It's just someone from the backfield is going to be starting a fantasy and that player would not be happy having to play that football player.
Exactly.
So let's start off with the free agency. We're going to start in your home division, Brian, the AFC East. Do you want to talk about your boy Josh Allen, or do you want to start with your home team, the New England Patriots?
We'll start with the home team, New England Patriots, because it's always a great topic.
Your new team, You re-sign Cam Newton for another year. Bill Belichick goes hard in the offseason. You re-sign Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne. You got new tight ends, Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry. For me, surface level, this looks like, for fantasy-wise, it really only benefits Cam Newton. Because I feel like at first it's like, oh, Jonnu Smith on the Pats, he's going to be great because they're going to feed him the ball. Then you throw in Hunter Henry. You take 2 top 10 tight ends and you put them on the same team now. Like, what do you do fantasy-wise?
I mean, fantasy-wise, I think they will probably take a drop-off from what they were on their significant teams. As a team as a whole, I think the Patriots are going to be absolutely dominant with 2 tight ends. I mean, if we look back on the Rob Gronkowski, Aaron Hernandez days, that was merely unstoppable. Yes, with Tom Brady on the team, that's one of the problems. But Cam Newton is now our quarterback, and he can't really throw the ball more than 15 yards. So you send 2 tight ends out, you leave him, 10 yards in. He's probably going to hit those passes this year and can run the ball. So we'll see a big change in the Patriots offense this year. Probably be way better than we were last year. But fantasy-wise, I don't know if you can trust them.
Way too early decision you have to make. If you had to start on one, would you rather start Hunter Henry or Jonnu Smith?
Jonnu Smith, 100%. He's way better after the catch. So he's got great speed. He's more physical. Hunter Henry's a little fragile. He's good in the red zone. That's the thing about Hunter Henry. He's really good in the red zone. So he may get more touches than Jonnu, but Jonnu has that ability to be able to catch like 5 balls, 60 yards, and a touchdown, while Hunter Henry is just, more of a red zone dependent type of guy.
Okay. Now, speaking of another rival, someone that's kind of competing for that second place seed, I want to just slowly go to the Dolphins for a second. They haven't really done much so far in free agency. They signed Jacoby Brissett to be the backup, I'd say. Signed Malcolm Butler. They signed Will Fuller, which is great for the Dolphins. I don't think it's great for Will Fuller's fantasy production.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I'm just not a big Tua fan, and I don't know what it is. I don't think he can pass the ball. Not a lot of lefties succeed in the NFL. Do I think he's good enough to be like a facilitator in the offense and run them? Like, run here, play action, go like a 5-yard dump off? Sure, but I don't think Will Fuller will get the same production as, Deshaun Watson slinging it down 60 yards down the field and having an amazing season. Even if he took steroids, still a good football player.
Okay. With the addition of Malcolm Brown, is Gaskins the guy? Now, this is pre-draft. This could all change if the Dolphins draft a running back. But if they don't draft a running back, how confident are you in Gaskins?
It's the gas can. I'm trusting them 20 times out of 20. I'm choosing the gas can every time. Malcolm Brown is good. They're probably going to use him for goal line carries because Gaskin's like this tall and yay big. But then again, I think he was one of the most used running backs in the red zone last season for how small he was.
Right.
But I think that, if they keep doing that and keep using him in the red zone, something's going to end up happening. He'll probably end up getting hurt. So you bring in Malcolm Brown for a touch here and there. So Gaskin's touchdowns will decrease over time, but I think he's still the primary back there.
For me, tell me if I'm wrong, he kind of reminds me of a hype around Devin Singletary. Like, great between the 20s. He can never really punch it in for that touchdown, though.
I mean, everyone's seen him on the Rams. Like, he's never really been that guy. Again,
I'm talking about Gaskins, not Malcolm Butler.
Oh, Gaskins? Yeah, no, Gaskins is good. I mean, I think one of the last games of the season, he caught 2 touchdowns, caught a 70-yard touchdown on a pass.
Right.
He's pretty good out of the backfield. He's shifty, too. So I guarantee the Dolphins probably go with him again. But with the adding of Brown, who knows how those touchdowns are going to end up in the season.
Right. Now, jetting on to the next team, the New York Jets, Bryan. Really, before this past news, they hadn't done much. But we're going to start with what's everyone's talking about right now, the most recent thing. They have traded away Sam Darnold. They've moved up high in the draft. It's clear that they want a quarterback. Their GM said they're most likely going to take a quarterback. Who do you think it's going to be?
It's going to be the best quarterback in the draft other than LeBron James, a.k.a. Trevor Lawrence, going to the Jaguars, Zach Wilson.
Okay. So would you say Zach Wilson is NFL ready, or is he more a prototype player?
I mean, if you go back in previous episodes, like I said, Zach Wilson will be the best player in the draft, maybe the best fantasy QB coming out of this draft. Just wait on it. I got a lot of hope for him.
So have him on the Jets. Do you still have a lot of hope with his team?
Honestly, I kind of do. I think that, they signed Corey Davis.
So right now, the other news is they signed Corey Davis. Is he the one, or is it Mims? They also signed Keelan Cole from the Jaguars, and now it's Tevin Coleman's in their backfield. So for like one of the questions I had is, what Jets receiver would you want? Would you want Crowder, Mims, Davis, or Cole?
I think Corey Davis will probably be the one receiver there. And Corey Davis is pretty good. He never really got the production that he needed in Tennessee because A.J. Brown and Jonnu and all these other guys made a lot bigger impacts. But I still got high hopes for Zach Wilson. I think the Jets still suck because their defense is terrible.
Yeah.
But I bet you they start losing games like 38 to like 30, and they're still putting up 30 points a game.
And it's like, wow, the Jets have a terrible record, but why is their quarterback putting up 25 fantasy points a game?
Exactly, and you're going to probably end up seeing that this season.
Okay, so if that's what you believe, if the Jets take Wilson, where do you take Wilson in fantasy drafts? Are you letting him be like the first guy picked up off of free agency, kind of like Justin Herbert last year?
No.
Or are you taking him with like your second or last pick in drafts?
No, he's like the second or last pick in drafts. Him and Trevor Lawrence are no doubt the guys that you need to take in your fantasy draft. And depending on where, maybe Justin Fields goes to, he can be up there as a flyer. But I think that Lawrence and Wilson both need to be taken at least at the end of a draft, worst case.
All right, now to end with a high note on the NFC East. The Buffalo Bills added this killer asset to their team.
Backup.
They signed my guy, Mitch Trubisky, to be their backup quarterback. And when I say my guy, he's not my fantasy guy. He's my college guy. But if he has to go in, he can move with his legs, but there's no point in talking about him for fantasy relevance. The bigger news is they signed Emmanuel Sanders to basically fill the John Brown role. They signed Matt Breida. So it basically says Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs are both set up for another great fantasy season.
Yeah, definitely. Again, if Josh Allen does go down, Mitch Trubisky isn't that bad of a backup. Probably one of the, if not the best backup in the entire NFL right now. I don't think Trubisky's that bad. If you look at his all-time record, he has a winning percentage of like 600%, I think, like that, which is pretty good, considering all the hate that he's gotten while he was in Chicago. And now they're moving on to Andy Dalton, which is just horrific and terrifying at the same time.
Did you know the Bills have 2 Pro Bowl quarterbacks now?
Yes. I guess you can call him a Pro Bowler for sure. But Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs are probably going to lead that team to another AFC East title, unless the Patriots start making some noise. And you never know. So
I do have to ask you this about Josh Allen. They haven't done anything yet. I mean, they signed like a veteran running back, but they really don't have an alpha dog at running back. Is Josh Allen, you'd still see him getting plenty of rushing touchdowns and rushing yards again this season?
Probably just from the dual threat ability that he has. He's so big, so all he has to do is just run to the side and play action. Next thing you know, you have 3 guys crossing, or he just runs right to the pylon. You can't really stop him, man. I don't even know how big he is, like 6'5", 230 probably.
Right, and he can throw it downfield, and he can take a linebacker with him too if he wants to.
He stiff-armed Kyle Van Noy to the ground last season, and that was probably his biggest achievement ever.
All right, moving on to where it's warmer, the AFC South. We kind of briefly touched on the Texans, but all you need to know is you really don't want to draft any fantasy players right now from the Texans. The Titans, however, have a lot of great fantasy options. So far in free agency, they signed Josh Reynolds just to fill the wide receiver 2 role. So I'd say A.J. Brown is now the clear alpha. And they also re-signed their tight end Frisker. So we got 2 questions, Brian. Is A.J. Brown going to be potentially a top 5 receiver this year? And is Frisker going to be a top 10 tight end this year? Jonnu came in at number 10 last year.
Frisker's good. I mean, he's definitely got production even when Jonnu was there. I know Jonnu got hurt for a little bit, but when Frisker was there, he was getting touchdowns and he was actually getting plays. So I can see him being that sleeper tight end, maybe throw it back to the Blake and the Blake Jarwin days that never really happened. That could be Frisker this season. But on top of that, A.J. Brown probably will be a top 10 wide receiver. I could see it. I don't like drafting him for whatever reason it is, but he continues to year after year put up great numbers. It's those Ole Miss guys, DK and A.J. Brown, just both studs.
Yeah. I think with what the Titans have done this year, you got rid of Jonnu, you got rid of Corey Davis. At the very least, he's going to get a large percentage of those missing targets now.
Yeah, 100%. And I think he'll be a, for sure, wide receiver, back end wide receiver 1 type of guy that you can plug into your lineup. And, he might get 2 catches for 30 yards. He might get 150 yards and 3 touchdowns. You never really know from A.J. Brown, but he puts up his stats at the end of the year, so you can kind of trust him.
He comes in clutch when you really need him.
When you really need him. And he always catches those clutch touchdowns at the end of the game every time.
Okay. Now we got to giddy up all the way to Indianapolis with the Colts. So they re-signed Marlon Mack. They traded for Carson Wentz. But the biggest thing I want to ask you about is how much does re-signing Marlon Mack affect your opinion on Jonathan Taylor's potential workload? I know how you feel about him, Brian. What is the Brian Tanville verdict on Jonathan Taylor?
I have to fall into liking John. I don't like Jonathan Taylor, first of all. I have to fall into liking him as a valuable fantasy asset.
Okay.
He's good. He had a really good end of the season, but that doesn't mean I don't think he's going to have an amazing season again next year. It really depends on if Carson Wentz is really, really good as the quarterback there, or if Marlon Mack comes back from injury and he was a stud in Indy beforehand. He was doing pretty well. And he takes away maybe 50% of the carries that Jonathan Taylor has over there. Who knows? But I won't be drafting Jonathan Taylor in any of my drafts.
Okay, so let's say you're at that back end of the first round. You really want that. You really want to go running back first, but all the top guys are off the board. So would you go Jonathan Taylor or Nick Chubb?
Oh, Nick Chubb.
Would you go Jonathan Taylor? Oh, why am I blanking on his name? I'll come back to it in a second. But, man, it's like just right there. But we'll move on to the Jaguars and see if I can remember this question for you. So Jaguars, they signed Marvin Jones. They signed Philip Dorsett. They signed Carlos Hyde. So now I feel like they kind of got a crowded wide receiver room of kind of similar talent level. You got your rookie quarterback coming in, Trevor Lawrence. Historically, rookie quarterbacks don't really produce great fantasy wide receivers. So if you had to take one, would you take Marvin Jones or DJ Chark?
Marvin Jones, probably. Marvin Jones, when Kenny Galladay went out last season, I picked up Marvin Jones in my league. He catches touchdowns, and he's honestly been producing for years, and he's always been slept on because Kenny Galladay has been that guy. So I can see Marvin Jones probably potentially catching like 1,000 yards and like 8 touchdowns. Again, I don't really like DJ Chark either, but I think he's good enough to fit in that offense, and Trevor Lawrence will make anyone look good.
You know what really hurts me, Brad? If I started DJ Chark last year in the fantasy championship, I would have won.
Yeah, but you didn't, honestly. But DJ Chark, what did he do for the rest of the season? Not much.
I feel like it's not entirely his fault. He was injured, and his team failed around him.
Well, maybe this is the year that he makes a comeback and actually shows that he's a viable fantasy asset.
Potentially. My heart's going to want to draft him. I don't know if I can. But actually, returning to the Jonathan Taylor question, I remembered. So he's this other player has fallen in drafts a bit just because of last year. Mm-hmm. So Jonathan Taylor or Zeke Elliott?
Oh, Dak Prescott coming back?
Yeah.
Zeke all day.
Okay. Because I think Zeke's sitting there mock drafts right now. He's backing him in the first round because people are scared to draft Zeke.
Well, it's Zeke with Ben DiNucci and Andy Dalton, or Zeke with Dak Prescott. It's what do you want to choose there? Did he have a fumbling issue? Yeah, he did. But with Dak Prescott in the lineup, he almost just shattered every passing yard record for a single season.
In those first 4 weeks, Zeke was the running back 3 when Dak was playing.
Yeah. Tony Pollard probably will get a little bit more workload this year, just because the Cowboys have so many weapons anyways, and Tony kind of showed himself. But I think Zeke will still be pretty good this year.
Okay. Next on our list, the AFC West. We're getting a little rowdy with this one. The Chiefs have honestly done nothing besides change their offensive line. They let Sammy Watkins go. So now it's basically the options are still the same. Do you take Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes? I think the bigger thing to think about right now is the running back situation. Damian Williams is gone. I'm assuming Lev Bell is a free agent. I don't think they're re-signing him. So now it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Do you think he'll have a better year than he did last year, or do you think he's going to kind of be sitting around in that same area?
Well, I got a lot of hope for Chiefs running backs because Andy Reid always has good running backs, going back to the Jamal Charles days and, what am I blanking on? Shady McCoy back with the Eagles. There's another running back that I'm just forgetting right now, but he's had a lot of consistent 1,000-yard running backs. So I think if Clyde can stay healthy and he gets the 20-carry workload that he gets and, Chiefs go up by 30 and they're like, all right, what are we going to do for the rest of the game? Second half, we're going to run the ball with Clyde. He might break off for some more runs here, but then again, it all comes down to will he get the workload that he deserves? And if he doesn't, then, who knows?
So, actually, if you look back at his stats, Clyde actually had a lot of yards on the ground last year. he just got snake bit with penalties. Like anytime he'd score a touchdown, there'd be an offensive penalty, then he'd move back and throw a passing touchdown.
Exactly. And I think they want to pass more in the red zone. So it's like if he starts to get a little bit more goal line work, I think he could be a solid RB2 this upcoming season. It's just kind of the risk you got to take with drafting him.
I feel like he's a solid RB2, very sneaky RB1 potentially if he starts to see those touchdowns.
Yeah, I could see that.
Okay. So the Chargers, they basically, all they've done is assign Jared Cook to replace Hunter Henry. I really don't see, maybe like Jared Cook is like half a step down, but Jared Cook is still a good football player, a good fantasy player. I really don't see much change in the Chargers offense at the moment. I still see Justin Herbert basically locking in on Keenan Allen and occasionally throwing to Mike Williams. Do you have are you higher on Jared Cook now that he's with the Chargers, or do you still see him like at 8th, 7th round tight end?
He's that guy that's always going to be dropped as a tight end. You kind of gotta hope for him to catch a touchdown, but I don't see any relevance this season with him. I mean, then again, the Chargers do have a really good offense this season, so he might surprise us and catch 8 touchdowns out of nowhere. I just wouldn't trust him, and I'd probably choose a couple other tight ends before going to Jared Cook.
He's the guy who historically feels like he's doing nothing, then catches a 40-yard touchdown at the season.
Yeah, he did have Drew Brees too, but I like Herbert, so I think the Chargers offense can be pretty good this season.
All right. Speaking of guys who like to go really fast, it feels like on paper, the moves they're making, they're just trying to make their team faster, but it's only hurting us for fantasy players. The Raiders signed Kenyon Drake. So now that only takes a starting running back, makes him a backup, but that also takes a lot of work away from another starting running back, Josh Jacobs. Where do each of those running backs go in drafts now?
Josh Jacobs hates fantasy football players, so that's one thing to note.
Yep.
Kenny Drake was supposed to be very good last season. We all saw what happened. He actually wasn't even that bad, which kind of hurts. But I think Kenny Drake now coming to the Raiders makes Josh Jacobs' value drop significantly. So I think it's going to be more of a risk-reward type situation. Like you take Josh Jacobs and you're going to be like, all right, is he going to get the same amount of production now that Kenny Drake's there? Or he still could be nasty, but there's also a really good chance that he doesn't. And Kenny Drake, they split 50-50. So I don't really know what to expect.
My gut says a 60-40 workload. Remember towards the end of the season last year, they're we're going to give Booker 1 out of every 3 possessions. That's going to change to be we're going to give Kenny and Drake an even split with Josh Jacobs because we want to rest our players.
That actually is a good point because they used to switch out every drive. It used to be Booker 1 drive, Jacobs 1 drive, Booker 1 drive, and then when games started to get close, clearly they went with Jacobs. But I think we'll probably see that more often this season as well. And I don't know why they do that, but I mean, the Raiders are going to Raiders, so.
Yeah. So they signed John Brown just because they want speed. Re-signed Zay Jones. Neither of those guys are really impressive at this point in their careers. So all I'm seeing is there's a lot of guys that can take the top of the defense off, and that just leaves the only fantasy relevant player in Las Vegas now is Darren Waller, and they're in the middle with Derek Carr, who loves to throw the Darren Waller. So I just feel like this was priming Waller for another good fantasy year.
Yeah, Waller's just consistent always. And did you mention Willie Snead too? Don't disrespect Willie Snead.
Snead's there now?
Don't disrespect Willie Snead out there. He's not a bad receiver. He was good back in the day. He's definitely not fantasy relevant, but I kind of like him.
Rank the Raiders wide receivers by fantasy relevance.
By fantasy relevance, John Brown definitely won. And then I'd probably add Willie Snead in there after number 2. I don't really like Zay Jones. Zay Jones did that cool little levitation thing where he got up and it went viral on the internet. But other than that, I don't think he has any relevance for football.
What about our Henry Ruggs, top 20 wide receiver
I don't like
Juan Ramon?
Henry Ruggs is just, oh my God. I started him, I think, in a semifinal game. I didn't want to, but I had to. And I think it was our league. And he got 4 points or whatever. And then I sat him the next week and he caught a Hail Mary to win the game. So that was cool.
Yeah. That's a typical boom or bust wide receiver right there. And now to finish getting on up with the Broncos. So they've signed Mike Boone. Philip Lindsay went to the Texans. So now Melvin Gordon is the clear-cut number 1 running back. Do you want Melvin Gordon as your running back 2 in fantasy this year?
No? Whatsoever. No. I had Melvin Gordon a couple of years ago. He was really good on the Chargers. I just hate everything about the Broncos offense. I just don't think the Broncos are a good team. I think they're going to be losing more games than they're not, and Melvin Gordon's getting a little washed at this point. So he's more of like an RB3 to me, RB4. Like, could put him in there, but there's a good chance that he also can get like 4 points or he can get like 20 points. You don't really know with him.
Okay, let me ask you like a fantasy draft strategy question on Melvin Gordon. You go running back round 1. You don't get any of the good running backs in round 2, so you go receiver, tight end, receiver.
Mm-hmm.
You're sitting there in the 4th round. You want to get that RB2 before like the rest of the RB2s are gone. Would you take Melvin Gordon at the end of round 4 if you don't have an RB2?
I mean, if the running backs are very bad, then yes, just because he is the starter on the team and he will get the carries here and there. But I wouldn't feel great about it.
Okay. Now let me ask you, if you had to pick one of the wide receivers, are you taking Cortland Sutton or Jerry Jeudy?
Jerry Jeudy. It's close because Cortland Sutton is good.
Right.
But
this is an entire year injury.
But I like Jerry Jeudy. I think he's explosive. I think Jerry Jeudy has the Calvin Ridley effect. Like, Calvin was really good when he came in, but didn't get as many targets. And once Jerry Jeudy starts getting like full targets, he could be the next Calvin Ridley. If Drew Lock can actually be a good quarterback, but again, to be determined.
Okay, let me ask you this, because this is actually a really big topic, Brian. Calvin Ridley was the last one. The year before is Chris Godwin. As a side note, who do you think is the wide receiver 2 that makes the leap this year where he's still the wide receiver 2 on the team, but he's a wide receiver 1 fantasy-wise? Are you going Jerry Jeudy, or a lot of people are looking towards CD Lamb this year?
If Dak Prescott's healthy, I do like CD Lamb. So I'd probably go CD Lamb. He's actually going, if you look at like Dynasty, I don't play Dynasty football leagues, but he's like a top choice. Like, Jonathan Taylor's a top choice. CD Lamb's like a very, very high top choice. And he still did pretty good last year just for having Ben DiNucci and Andy Dalton as his quarterback.
He was a top 20 wide receiver last year with Andy Dalton and Ben DiNucci as his quarterback.
And he sat on my bench all season, and I didn't start him. I actually started him once, and he got a touchdown. But other than that, I didn't really start him. So I think with Dak coming back, I think that he probably ups it a little bit, probably gets like 1,200 yards, maybe 8 touchdowns, but has the ceiling to even go beyond that.
Okay. What about this question? Would you rather have Amari Cooper in the 3rd round or CD Lamb in the 4th round?
I like Amari Cooper. He's just so hit or miss. You never really know with Amari Cooper. I think CD Lamb playing in the slot on that team is like consistently he will get 10 targets. It's like Amari Cooper gets covered by one of the best cornerbacks in the league. You never know if he's going to catch like one ball, or he'll have his games where he has like 10 catches for like 150. And you're like, where did this Amari Cooper come from?
Yeah, what about the old op, Michael Gallup? Do you have any relevance at all for him?
No, he's a bench stash. He's a guy that you pick up when you're like, I got 7 guys on bye this week and I need to pick up a wide receiver. Hope he catches a touchdown.
Do you know how many plays he played in the slot last year?
How many?
0.
Well, he's a deep throw guy anyway, so I can see that.
Yeah. Now, going up where it's colder, the AFC North, Brian. That's going. So I'm going to repeat that cell for me. Boom, boom. All right, so going up north, it's a little bit colder, Brian. The Steelers. Big Ben comes back again. They re-signed Juju. Not really feeling great for that fantasy offense now with how old Big Ben is, what happened to him at the end of the season. And Juju, Claypool, Johnson, like, I just feel so crowded. Like, I feel like the only relevant receiver right now in Pittsburgh is Johnson.
Yeah, Deontay Johnson is definitely the best. And like, I don't know what the Steelers are going to do. They're going to be like, wow, this schedule is nothing like the one we had last year, where it was probably the easiest schedule in NFL history. And we started off undefeated, and then we played a decent team like the Redskins. What was it, the Redskins they lost to?
I think it was their first loss was the football team.
The football team was the first team that they lost to. And then they just continued to lose and lose and lose after that. Really showcasing that the Steelers are not that good whatsoever, and it's pretty much the Browns and Ravens division.
Right. So James Conner is gone. There's no running back there yet. If they draft who everyone kind of hopes they draft, the running back from Alabama,
Najee.
Are you going to draft Najee?
Oh, of course. You take a Steelers running back every time in that offensive line. Do I think James Conner had a good few seasons because that offensive line was very good. They're starting to get a little worse as time goes on, but they've signed 4, and they've re-signed and signed 4 new offensive tackles or offensive linemen. So I think they're going to be pretty good this season, their offensive line in general, trying to save Big Ben from a catastrophic injury. So if Najee can go there, I think Najee's probably, if not the best running back in the draft and fantasy relevance moving forward.
Now the Ravens. They had a hard time in free agency trying to get a wide receiver because every wide receiver looks at offense and goes, oh, they don't really throw the ball. Why would I want to go there if I'm going to get paid based off my numbers? So the only guy they managed to really sign was Sammy Watkins, and they traded for a backup tight end. For me personally, I see them signing Sammy Watkins now just basically adds another mouth to the smallest pie in the NFL. And it just says, sorry, Hollywood Brown, but I'm going to have no relevance if Sammy Watkins is on the other opposite side of the field from you.
I don't think Sammy Watkins or Marquise Brown have any relevance whatsoever. I think the only person that you can trust in that offense is Mark Andrews, Lamar Jackson, and who's the running back now?
Mr. Dobbins?
Oh, Mr. Dobbins. I like J.K. Dobbins. You can draft J.K. Dobbins with confidence. He's a very good running back.
The only thing I have to say about drafting J.K. Dobbins, you have to emotionally be prepared for when Lamar steals the touchdown.
Yeah, that's true. But that's like any other running quarterback that's on your team too. But J.K. Dobbins was pretty good towards the end of the season, and that's when he started getting a full workload. And now the whole season ahead of him, I think that, they'll probably be like, hey, let's try to save Lamar. Let's try to make him not run as much. We brought in these receivers, and let's give J.K. Dobbins 20 to 25 carries and see what he can do. So I think he'll be pretty good this season.
All right. Speaking of a very ugly color, but honestly had an awesome season. The Browns. They re-signed Rashad Higgins, and that's really about it. But I feel like even though on paper they should be better with OBJ in their offense, I just feel like the offense clicks better when it's Jarvis Landry's the main guy. So if OBJ is healthy, do you feel confident in drafting OBJ this year? The last 2 years have been disappointing for him.
Definitely not with confidence, for sure. It's more of you have to take him. He's going to fall to you, and he's going to be that guy that just keeps falling and falling and falling and be like, wow, do I take I can't even think of a relevant player compared to him. Those middle tier wide receivers or OBJ.
Okay. OBJ or Tyler Lockett?
Tyler Lockett.
OBJ or David Moore?
OBJ.
OBJ or I'm trying to think of receivers who might be kind of around that, because I seem like a late fourth round, mid fifth round kind of spot.
I know what you're trying to say, somewhere in that middle tier of wide receivers, maybe a Cooper Kupp,
OBJ or Jerry Jeudy.
OBJ.
Okay.
So he's there
because of OBJ or because of Drew Lock.
Drew Lock.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely what it is. I like Baker. He's the only guy left in that draft that was drafted as a QB that's on the same team, so that's something to note as well.
Right.
And I think that he's probably going to be pretty good, and if OBJ can stay healthy, it definitely doesn't help the Browns win, but, if you have to force the ball to him, he will catch those 60-yard touchdowns.
Wait. Baker Mayfield was the same draft as Lamar and Josh Allen, though, right?
Wasn't? Maybe I could be mistaken.
Yeah, because I think it went Mayfield.
Yeah, no, you are right.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of a different draft then. Yeah. That's just completely incorrect.
Yeah. The Bengals, Brian. I feel like they've honestly done nothing relevant in free agency. AJ Green is gone. Matt Gatzey's here if you're listening to this, Gatzey. So the Bengals, you're going into your Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins are your receivers. Joe Mixon making the comeback. The quarterback, Joe Burrow, making the comeback from his horrific injury. Fantasy relevance for the Bengals right now. Is Joe Mixon still a first-round running back?
No.
Is he a second-round running back?
Yes.
Would you rather have Tyler Boyd or T. Higgins?
Tyler Boyd, 100%. He gets way more targets than T. Higgins. T. Higgins is good, but Tyler Boyd just is the clear-cut guy.
Does Joe Burrow crack the top 15 at quarterback?
Yeah, I think so. I think he has the potential to throw for 4,500 yards and push in 40 touchdowns if he stays healthy.
Yeah.
He's pretty smart, and I think when he was healthy, he had some games where he was throwing for 400 yards. So who says he can't do that again when he's fully healthy and has a full season ahead of him?
Right. Thoughts on if the Bengals make an effort to reunite him with Jamar Chase?
That would be pretty cool. I think that would be a really cool idea. I think, when are they picking? They're picking 7th, right?
Yeah, they're early. They're they're one of those teams that have an early draft pick if you take out all the quarterback teams.
I think the mock drafts are saying that the Dolphins are going to take Jamar Chase, but I wouldn't be surprised. That's just speculation, and they'd probably end up taking Devonta Smith instead, or Waddle. But if they can somehow land him, I wouldn't doubt it. See that Joe Burrow and Chase are on the same team again.
I think that'd just be great chemistry and would lead to some sort of fantasy relevance.
Yeah, and if that is the case and he does get drafted by them, then both are very relevant in fantasy.
Yeah. So, what was last year the laughing stock of the NFL? We're switching over to the NFC, specifically the East Division. And we both had a lot of stock in this guy last year. He let us down with injury, but we're going to talk about the Giants and how they signed Kenny Golladay. Honestly, he downgraded quarterback for fantasy relevance. Daniel Jones is not Matthew Stafford in the passing game. The Giants have also signed John Ross and Kyle Rudolph. For me, Kenny Golladay is still going to be a good fantasy wide receiver, but he doesn't have the same ceiling as he did with the Lions.
No, not at all. Daniel Jones really isn't that great or spectacular, and he's going to fall into the tiers of the Sterling Shepherds who are he got 8 targets and 65 yards, but what did he do other than that? He's going to have his games where he's going to suck now, which is just unfortunate because Kenny Golladay is a really good receiver. Or, Daniel Jones just comes out of nowhere and he just absolutely blows everyone out of the water, and Kenny Golladay is a top 10 receiver.
This is the year where Daniel Jones, you have to prove yourself. You have Kenny Golladay, Sterling Shepard is year 2.
Barkley.
And Barkley, quote unquote, will be healthy for year 4.
I mean, you see those man's quads, I'm sure that he's probably going to be ready to go, but who knows? I mean, it's the Giants. The Giants are going to Giants every single year. They might as well just bring back Eli Manning and get a lucky Super Bowl.
Right. So the thing is, they like to play through their defense. Their defense is really good, and people forget about that because their offense was just abysmal last year.
Exactly.
So now the Eagles, who after trading Carson Wentz, have honestly done nothing because they literally have the biggest dead cap hit from that trade. So they moved in the draft. So I think now the speculation is, what do they do with that early pick? Do they take a quarterback if that falls to them? Or is Jalen Hurts the stopgap right now? Or maybe the long-term answer for the Eagles? I don't know how they feel about it. But Jalen Hurts kind of feels like that trap fantasy player where you're maybe he's going to be the next Lamar Jackson, or maybe he just turns out to be nothing.
Yeah, I think that's the same thing. I think he's definitely a trap. I do think that he has the potential to be a decent fantasy quarterback, but I don't think what he was doing at the end of last season will equate to the entire season for the Philadelphia Eagles. I think the Redskins still have that division anyways, and then the Eagles are going to be the 2-3 fighting with the Giants. And then, you clearly got the Cowboys with Dak coming back. Cowboys probably will end up winning the division anyway, so it's I don't expect much out of the Eagles. Do I think Hurts is good for the dual threat of running and passing? Yes. Do I think it will, be consistent over the entire year? No, probably not.
Speaking of the Cowboys, we've kind of touched on this earlier, but all they really did was sign Dak Prescott to a 4-year deal. That's good news for Zeke. That's good news for the rest of the receiving core. That's good news for the hopeful breakout as we've been hoping for. And you know what the biggest thing about free agency that the Cowboys have done?
What's that?
They have not improved their defense, Brian. Do you know what that means? It means a lot of offense for the Cowboys.
I mean, yes, it's going to be a lot of high-scoring games with the Cowboys. They are going to come into the season like they do every year. Everyone's going to think the Cowboys are great. They got so much potential, so much offense, a lot of firepower, and they'll probably end up going.
They can't go 8-8 anymore.
Can't go 8-8 anymore. I was just about to say it. So they might go 9-8 this year and barely miss playoffs somehow, or I don't know. They could surprise us. Who knows? You never know with the Cowboys. But I do like the Redskins this year. Again, they are a very consistent team.
Brian, not the Redskins anymore.
The football team.
The football team. I love the football team.
I don't call them the football team. I don't like it.
Speaking of the football team, they added a magician to their roster, Brian.
Of course they did. Fitzmagic.
Do you know what I love about Fitzmagic?
What's up?
He's great for fantasy, especially if you have the players he's giving the ball to.
And who are those players?
Brian, you're really my sweet prince.
Yeah.
Antonio Gibson.
Antonio Gibson. He was going to be pretty good this year.
I've got a fun thing to ask you about later, but first I kind of want to start off with, for people who want to know why Fitzmagic is good for fantasy, some of DeAndre Hopkins' best years. Who is his quarterback?
Deshaun Watson.
Yes, but who else threw him the ball occasionally before Deshaun Watson?
Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yeah. When Brandon Marshall broke the Jets record for receptions, who was his quarterback?
Fitzpatrick.
When the thought to be a wash, thought to be busted, Devontae Parker had his breakout year, who was his quarterback?
Fitzmagic.
So you know what this means, Brian?
What does this mean?
It means Scary Terry
is going to be great. What about Curtis Samuel?
So I think Curtis Samuel is going to be used like he was when Ron Rivera was still the head coach in the Panthers. He's going to be, I think they saw last year that Curtis Samuel is this gadget player that you can put him more over the place, but I believe Curtis Samuel will be playing more wide receiver this year than he will running back.
Terry McLaurin or Scary Terry and Curtis Samuel roomed in college together, so they already got that duo connection. And I mean, Fitzmagic just slings the ball wherever he can find a player, and just somehow, by the grace of God, it just falls into people's hands. So
yeah.
I think that Curtis Samuel is actually going to be pretty good this year, and he was fantasy relevant last year. You could start Curtis Samuel with confidence as like a lower guy, but I think that Scary Terry probably will be the main guy, and if not, will be better than he was last year.
Oh, clearly. Because Ryan Fitzpatrick will find the guy he likes the most and throw him the ball regardless of how he's covered.
Oh, yeah. He will just throw it up. He'll throw 30 picks and he doesn't even care. He'll just throw it up.
And so the football team has basically re-signed Lamar Miller. And I think that's amazing news because it's like we're adding a veteran running back who's not going to get a lot. Like, he's going to be a change of pace guy at this point in his career, which means it's Antonio Gibson's season, Brian.
Where has Lamar Miller been? I honestly, I feel like he just fell off a cliff and just never came back. I know he got hurt, but, I feel like it was the first time Lamar Miller's, signed a one-year deal, and he's like, wow, I'm playing football again.
Wasn't he on the Patriots last year?
Yeah, he was for a little bit, and then I think we got him.
I think, after, his few years in Houston, that was really it for Lamar Miller.
Yeah, and then he had his time in the Dolphins, too, Let's not forget. Lamar Miller was a good running back.
The Dolphins was before the Texans, right?
No, I want to say it was Dolphins.
Because I want to say he was all right on the Dolphins, then had good years on the Texans.
Yeah, then, you're right.
And then that 1 year he got hurt, and then disappeared.
You're right.
All right, going down south. I think we got to talk about the team that's a little bit more in the news right now because of their recent trade. The Panthers, they've traded for Sam Darnold. Do you know who they also have in their roster, Brian?
Who's that?
Teddy Bridgewater.
I was actually looking this up the other day, and honestly, I don't know what they're going to do. Are they going to go with Sam Darnold, or are they going to go with Teddy Bridgewater?
Last time Sam Darnold and Teddy Bridgewater were on the same team, they went 4-12.
I mean, you're playing a division with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers anyways. I don't think you have any hopes whatsoever going into the season.
Because for me, it's Teddy Bridgewater is not a bad core. It's how can you be out on Teddy Bridgewater after 1 year when he didn't have Christian McCaffrey playing with him? It's just
that's true.
And Sam Darnold is I think he gets a lot of bad rap because he's on the Jets and the Jets suck, but he's not the worst quarterback. I just don't think he's a significant upgrade over Teddy Bridgewater.
I think that Sam Darnold is better than Teddy Bridgewater, and I think Sam Darnold has a lot of talent. Again, his career was wasted on the Jets, and as every other quarterback that goes in there, except for Zach Wilson, noted. But I think that they probably go with Sam Darnold to start the season.
So, Brian, Panthers wide receivers, they re-signed David Moore. Would you rather David Moore or Robbie Anderson?
Robbie Anderson, no doubt. Robbie Anderson's the guy.
Would you rather draft David Moore in the 4th or Robbie Anderson in the 7th?
Robbie Anderson in the 7th, 100%.
Yeah, for me it's mainly because Robbie Anderson in the 7th still gets the same amount of looks and targets as David Moore. Doesn't get the touchdowns that Moore gets, but it's just when they get the same production, it feels real bad as a David Moore owner.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Are we talking about DJ Moore? Or are we talking about David Moore, though?
Sorry, my bad. DJ Moore.
Okay.
My bad.
Because David Moore, good guy. He's, probably got a good family, everything that's going on.
Right.
Not the best football player. DJ Moore, though.
DJ Moore.
Football guy. He's a touchdown scorer. Robbie Anderson, though, if Sam Darnold starts, Robbie Anderson's good.
Yeah.
If Teddy Bridgewater starts, I trust DJ Moore over Robbie Anderson.
Do you know who also has a connection with Robbie Anderson?
Who?
Sam Darnold, just from being on the Jets, as you kind of alluded to.
Exactly. I mean, that's what I'm saying. If Sam Darnold starts, it's a no-brainer that Robbie Anderson and him are going to rekindle that connection right there. I've already seen a ton of memes and videos of people like Sam Darnold getting fired from the Jets and traded over to the Panthers, calling up Robbie Anderson right away. They're going to do some magic over there. Exactly.
Did you know they threw a party for Sam Darnold by getting traded to the Panthers.
I didn't know that, actually.
Yeah, his family celebrated it.
I mean, yeah, I would too. That's like a big achievement in his life.
Okay, to talk about one of their division foes who didn't do too hot last year. Everyone was hoping they'd make a splash in the running back market, but their splash was so far signing Mike Davis at running back. The Falcons, Brian. They now have the former Titans OC as their head coach. We all got to see what Derrick Henry and AJ Brown did. People are hoping maybe you get that same sort of offensive play action, just basically fantasy points for the running back, fantasy points for the wide receivers. Mike Davis was running back 18 trying to replace Christian McCaffrey last year. Do you think Mike Davis is going to be the guy, or do you think they try to sign someone else or go somewhere in the draft?
I think Mike Davis has what it takes to be an RB1, and he's proven himself as Christian McCaffrey has lingered injuries over the last 2 years or so. I think that they probably do stick with Mike Davis, but I wouldn't doubt if they sign like a backup too, because they've always had that like Devonta Freeman, Tevin Coleman combo, the Brian Hill, Ito Smith combo. So they always have that one guy that kind of comes in and takes that workload away. But I think they'll probably stick with Mike Davis for at least the beginning of it.
Yeah, let's see. I just got a little announcement on Bleacher Report that says Josh Jacobs x Jamar Chase. Looks like they're just working out together. Yep, that's all they did.
They just worked out together?
Yeah, that's a Bleacher Report update that they worked out together.
Interesting. So hopefully...
That's where we're at for NFL news. Players working out our headlines.
Okay, that's great. That's great news.
Speaking of great news for Tampa Bay, the Buccaneers have re-signed all of their starters on both sides, which just means I have no idea what I'm going to do in fantasy with this offense. I don't know if I can draft Gronk. I don't know if I can trust Godwin and Evans, because who knows, last year neither did great, or neither felt like they did great. Mike Evans was still a top 10 wide receiver, but he had his bust games where it just made you feel awful. They've re-signed Leonard Fournette. Bruce Arians says he wants to get Keyshawn Vaughn more involved, so now it's like, okay, there's 3 running backs you have to think about. And there's been no news on Antonio Brown.
Yeah, I don't know about the Antonio Brown news yet. I'm assuming that they probably will sign him for like a cheap deal, just so he can stick around Tom Brady. I mean, the Buccaneers, no doubt, will win the Super Bowl probably again.
Right.
But in terms of fantasy, it's kind of tough to choose, will Gronk be relevant? I don't think Gronk's going to be that good of a tight end, honestly. I think that he'll probably be more of a blocking side, try to keep him healthy, and then explode in the playoffs like he did last time.
Not to mention O.J. Howard's going to be coming back too.
O.J. Howard's coming back too. So, I mean, you can draft Godwin and Evans at the same middle tier. Probably Evans because he has a little bit more upside on touchdowns. But at the same time, if you play in a PPR league, Godwin's probably the better source than Evans. So it's really tough to tell.
And it's just like if they re-sign Antonio Brown, I'm pretty much out on Godwin. Yeah. Unless he's like sitting there in like the 5th round.
It's tough. There's a lot of good players on that team that it's like it hurts fantasy relevance, but their team overall is just amazing.
Right. Fantastic for football, fantastic for Madden, terrible for fantasy.
Exactly.
Speaking of another team that's in a terrible situation, Brian, the Saints. So they re-signed Winston. They signed T.Y. Montgomery. But it's just like, I feel like they haven't made clear. Is Winston the quarterback or was Hill the quarterback?
Winston, I think, is the quarterback going to be moving forward. Winston, honestly, could be pretty fantasy relevant. I mean, will he throw for 45 touchdowns? Probably. Will he throw for 30 picks as well? Probably. But he's going to sling the ball. And, with Kamara in the backfield too, I think that he'll do pretty well. But then again, the Hill combo might add a little effect.
Here's the part that kind of like worries me. Winston's great for your fantasy weapons when he's in Tampa with Bruce Arians who just wants to throw the ball downfield. I don't feel the same way about the Saints coaching staff.
No, and I said it, I think I said this before, but like the Saints had to cut so many people just to be able to make cap. And I think they still have like $14 million they need to shed, which is like the same exact amount of what Taysom Hill is getting this season. So they can either cut or trade Taysom Hill and just go straight with Winston and have this little crummy team that they got going on with Alvin Kamara just, probably carrying the workload for the entire season.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, they got Michael Thomas, they got Kamara. So they'll be somewhat relevant fantasy players, but at the same time, we don't know what to expect from the Saints.
Now heading over to the NFC Best, as they were called last year, Brian. The NFC West. And I want to start with the 49ers, just because they've done so little. They've re-signed fullback Juszczyk, and they moved up in the draft. I think really like fantasy value in the 49ers, George Kittle, and then it kind of stops there. Like, because they have a fantastic run game, it's just impossible to know which running back it's going to be.
Yeah, I think the running backs are tough to determine, and I think that Ayuk and Deebo Samuel are like the same amount of value for the wide receiver. Ayuk might be like, I actually don't even know because they're so similar in so many different ways. Like one time they have a really good game, and then the next time it goes to the other guy, so it's tough to determine. And with a full season of George Kittle, like it's just a tough place to draft for fantasy players.
Yeah, because it's like you're putting faith in George Kittle. Because the thing is, like, George Kittle is super talented, but all of his fantasy points are contested. Like, he's making tough catches. Because, like, he never gets wide open plays. He has to catch it in coverage. So it's basically a lot of George Kittle's production is also your faith in their quarterback play.
Yeah, and I also think we have to wait to see the draft, who they take at quarterback. If they take Justin Fields, could be pretty good. They could take Mac Jones. They could take, who's the other guy?
Trey Lance.
And if, they take any of those three guys, like, I think all those guys get a bump in their stock. But then again, can you really trust them? Because the 49ers are so inconsistent with how they move the ball around. So it could be a big run day. It could be a big pass day. Like, you never really know with the Niners.
Right. Now, the Rams are also in a little bit of a cap kind of situation. All they've really done is they signed Deshaun Jackson, which 6 years ago would be a fantastic signing. Now, I just feel like it's kind of out of respect. Like, you still have to think about Deshaun Jackson as a football player perspective, but you can't really draft Deshaun Jackson anymore, can you?
No, he's going to be in free agents, or he'll be like a last 14, 15 rounder.
But what about if you combine him with Matthew Stafford? Is he still a no?
Yeah, no. Yeah, you just can't trust. He will get hurt because he gets hurt every season. It's sad to say, but he's just not relevant whatsoever anymore.
Okay. Who do you think Matthew Stafford picks as his guy, Cooper Kupp or Robert Woods?
Cooper Kupp. I have big hopes for Cooper Kupp this season. I don't know why. I just think that small little hitches that he does, he's going to catch 10 balls a game. And if you're in a PPR, half PPR league, Cooper Kupp will consistently put up double-digit points. I mean, Robert Woods is good. Don't get me wrong. He's clear-cut one there. But I think that, I'd rather choose Cooper Kupp for the value of what he's at.
Yeah. Do you know who also gets a lot of targets from Matthew Stafford?
Who's that?
The running back. Big breakout year for Cam Akers this year, Brad?
I actually do. I think that Cam Akers is actually pretty good, and you can draft him at running back with confidence.
I think Cam Akers is the perfect running back to take if you go wide receiver, running back.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Cam Akers has the potential to be an RB1 this season, but he'll probably be taken as a RB2-ish.
Yeah, I think Cam Akers is going to be taken with what you thought he was going to do the year before, trying to fill in that Todd Gurley role. But I think this is the year he basically is asked to fill that role.
No, I totally agree with that. I think he'll be pretty good.
Okay. In the desert, Ryan, the Cardinals, they signed A.J. Green. 5 years ago, that would have been amazing.
Oh, yeah.
But now it's just A.J. Green is clearly the two. I feel like he's the veteran guy you have to put some sort of coverage on, or they just needed a target that's worth value to basically complement DeAndre Hopkins.
I think so too. I think that deep threat, you have to respect AJ Green for the potential that he could catch an 80-yard bomb on your head.
Yeah.
And then you also got a speedster in Christian Kirk, and it's leaving DeAndre Hopkins with a little bit more room, a little bit more leeway to actually be a lot better than he was last year because he kind of disappointed some people where he was drafted.
I think the disappointment came once Kyler Murray hurt his arm. And then you saw DeAndre Hopkins, his route changed. He didn't go deep anymore. He's just doing little hitches, little slants, not really getting downfield as much.
Yeah, I think DeAndre Hopkins will go back to being a top 5 wide receiver this season, just with the added weapons that the Cardinals added, like AJ. Even though AJ is not the greatest, you still have to respect who he is and the potential that he can catch something over your head.
Yeah. What's your feeling on Chase Edmonds right now? Kenyon Drake is gone. Chase Edmonds is the next guy up on the board. If they don't take a running back in the draft, where are you seeing Chase Edmonds in fantasy drafts?
I like Chase Edmonds, honestly. I think that He could be what Kenny Drake is, just a little bit better because he can catch out of the backfield. And if he's the only guy there and he can get 15 to 20 carries with the ability to be able to catch out of the backfield, he's going to be a sneaky, like, high-end RB2, like, at a value, but he'll probably be drafted as, like, an RB3, maybe.
I just, like, it's one of those things where it's just, like, if he gets the same hype that Kenny Drake got last year and that offense does the same exact thing where you've got this guy that needs to be going outside the tackles and is run up to the middle, it's going to be one of those years where it's just like you drafted a guy with so much potential and then it's just like did nothing.
It's going to be tough to see, but then again, I think that his pass catching ability differentiates from Kenny Drake because he wasn't really a pass catcher, and they did that like 2-system role where like third downs would be Chase Edmonds and Kenny Drake would just run up the gut, which he's not a running back for. Kenny Drake's an outside runner that can just sprint up the field, and they just managed it so poorly. So I'm hoping that they can figure everything out and Chase Edmonds can be relevant in fantasy.
Now the biggest news of the offseason, Brian.
What is it?
The Seattle Seahawks did not trade Russell Wilson.
Crazy.
That is the most blown out of proportion offseason news I've seen for a while. The big thing is that they really did is they re-signed Chris Carson. So the Rashad Penny truthers have to keep on waiting. I don't think it's ever going to happen for Rashad Penny, which is disappointing. They've signed Gerald Everett to basically replace their old aging tight end because Greg Olson's gone. I think maybe Everett has a little bit more fantasy value because Russ likes to target his tight ends. I just think now the offense is really geared towards Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do like Gerald Everett. He's like a good pass catching, fast tight end that's like acts as a tight end but is really a receiver. So I think that it'll be good for the Seahawks. They'll probably end up winning the division this year, sad to say. But I also want to note that the Bears thought they were going to get Russell Wilson in the trade and ended up with Andy Dalton, which is just the biggest meme of all time.
Actually, so speaking of Gerald Everett, was on the Rams. Who's on the Rams? Tyler Higbee. Who do you guys think has a better fantasy season at tight end now? Tyler Higbee being by himself with Matthew Stafford or Gerald Everett with Russell Wilson?
Tyler Higbee, probably. I mean, I like Everett there, but I feel like Russell Wilson doesn't target his tight ends as much as he should.
Yeah. Speaking of a team that is really just a giant question mark now, moving to the NFC North, the Lions, they've signed Jamal Williams. That really hurts the potential breakout of DeAndre Swift. They signed Tyrell Williams to be maybe the number one wide receiver if he's even healthy. They've signed Rashad Perryman, who is basically, this is great for Perryman, just awful for Lions fans.
The Lions are fighting for the worst spot in the NFL. Like, they are really going to be bad. Like, I think they have the potential to go 0-17. That's how scary it is. But I do like Swift and Jamal Williams just because the Lions love to run the ball 952 times a game. If it was even possible, they probably could.
But it's like, if they run that much, they've never really had a fantasy running back that you feel confident in playing.
They're just a terrible team. That's all I have to say. They just got nothing going for them. So try to avoid drafting Lions players is my suggestion. Swift's probably the only person you can draft with a little bit of confidence, but don't expect a lot from them. Speaking
of a team you don't expect a lot from this year, they've now signed the former Red Rifle Andy Dalton, as you were talking about the Bears, and now the meme. Allen Robinson has agreed to the franchise tag, and I think that's only because he can make more money following this year on a bigger contract than trying to get a big contract in a year where there's a limited salary cap.
I feel bad for Allen Robinson. I really do. No one knows how good Allen Robinson really is. Like, he's consistently putting up great numbers year after year, and he's consistently had terrible quarterbacks. Like, just give him a good quarterback and see what he does. But at this point in time, he might be getting too old, and like, no one's gonna ever really see how great Allen Robinson could have been because he's always on terrible teams. Bears players, terrible. You can maybe draft David Montgomery, hoping that he did what he did, but don't count on it.
About that, Brian, they signed Damian Williams.
Oof.
The Super Bowl MVP, Damian Williams, right?
Oof. Damian Williams, yeah. I mean, he's not terrible. Like, it's a good signing. It's like the 1-2 punch for Montgomery.
Yeah, but you know who is also coming back too?
Who's that?
Tariq Cohen.
Oh, Tariq Cohen, that's correct. So you got your pass-catching guy out there, you got Damian Williams who can do both, and then you got David Montgomery who just runs up the middle and makes people look stupid. So they got a good running back core, I guess.
So it sounds like you're still high on David Montgomery. I've cooled off a lot on David Montgomery.
I mean, with all the people coming around with Damian Williams and Tariq Cohen, I'm not drafting David Montgomery.
Okay, that's what I was trying to make sure.
Yeah, there's no way. His value is way too high, and if someone's going to take him in like the second or third round, there's no chance, and I'm taking him there.
Yeah. Jake, don't draft David Montgomery if you want to be relevant. Don't do it. Let someone else make that mistake.
Jake, draft David Montgomery so the rest of us can win.
Speaking of a team that just really, really wants to win but can never really just push over that final game, the Packers. The NFC Championship is their nightmare, but hopefully Aaron Jones being there for more years now can make it a little less painful for Packers fans. But that limits the potential breakout of A.J. Dillon. It's not going to happen this year. And I think with the contract they gave Aaron Jones, they said, Aaron Jones, you are the guy. A.J. Dillon is not going to come on and take a significant part of your workload now. You also don't have to worry about Jamal Williams running the 2-minute drill and Aaron Jones fantasy owners punching air because their guy is not on the field for 2 of the most important minutes of the game.
They just don't trust Aaron Jones whatsoever. They're like, all right, we're going to take it easy on Aaron Jones. We're going to make the playoffs, and then we're going to pretend like we're going to give him a lot of carries, and then we're just going to go the completely opposite direction. We're going to give it to Jamal Williams, or we're going to give it to A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon was supposed to break out this year, supposed to be a stud, and he was completely sideswiped by Aaron Jones signing back with them when he should have signed with like the Dolphins or something like that. But, the Packers are going to Packers. Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers, probably the best duo in the entire league. Both consistent fantasy players. Another great playoff team. I don't think you have anything bad to say about the Packers offense.
No, if you only have something bad to say if you don't actually own the Packers. I mean, if you don't own Aaron Rodgers, if you don't own Aaron Jones, if you don't own Devontae Adams, there's really nothing to really want in fantasy.
No, there's nothing other than that. MVS is the ultimate free agent guy where, again, you want a 90-yard touchdown, you might go and get that for you.
He comes up big in the games you don't expect him to, and the games you really need him to, he gets you nothing.
Yeah, it's like MVS plays like the Rams, and you're like, oh, no way I'm playing MVS against him, and then he catches like 2 touchdowns for 100 yards, and you're like, where did this come from against the best team in the NFL, the best defense in the NFL? So he does do that, yeah, I agree.
Speaking of a team that's made almost no changes to their offense, they've re-signed Chad Beebe, but the Vikings are telling me it's another Dalvin Cook here. But I think the biggest fantasy question is Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. It's basically everyone's going to be on the Justin Jefferson hype. So I think all the fantasy pros, they are really looking forward to Adam Thielen on discount this year.
Was Adam Thielen a top 10 wide receiver last year? If I'm not mistaken. He was up there. I had Adam Thielen, and I should have won the championship, but I didn't.
Do you know who was higher than Adam Thielen?
It was Justin Jefferson.
Right.
But they're both very consistent. They're both very good. The thing about Adam Thielen is he catches more touchdowns.
Yeah.
And the thing about Justin Jefferson is that he gets way more targets in the middle of the field and working up all the way up into the red zone.
Typically because he had the less impressive coverage.
He's the Stephon Diggs role. So I think that, Justin Jefferson is probably the safer play to draft. But I think that you can draft Adam Thielen and be confident with that decision. So,
see, what was I was about to say something. So, would you rather, Justin Jefferson in the 3rd round or Adam Thielen in the 4th round? But what's impressive to me is
that's tough.
A team that's super run heavy still had 2 top 10 wide receivers.
Yeah, I'd probably take Justin Jefferson just because I think that he's faster, he's better, he's more skilled than Adam Thielen. But Adam Thielen is a damn threat in the red zone.
Right.
Do not let go of Adam Thielen in the red zone because he will catch touchdowns for you.
Okay. Before we go, Brian, I still think there's a few fantasy things we need to point out to watch, especially as the draft unfolds and then we eventually start to get into training camp. There are running back holes that need to be filled or stepped into this year. The Steelers need to draft a running back. Everyone's hoping for Harris. Are the Cardinals going to hand the keys to Edmonds, or are they going to draft someone? The Broncos only have Melvin Gordon. Are the Jets going to roll with Tevin Coleman, in your opinion, or do you think they're going to draft someone?
The Jets are just a disgrace of an organization, so whatever they do will probably be the wrong choice.
Yeah.
They probably will draft a running back, in the later rounds, but for the meantime, I think they probably want to stick with Tevin Coleman.
And where's your confidence level on the Falcons going with Mike Davis and the Dolphins going with Gaskins? just to reiterate our previous points?
I like both those options. I like Gaskins. I think Gaskins is good, and I think Mike Davis is also really good. And I think he fits the Falcons' offense pretty well because he can catch the ball too. So Matt Ryan scrambles. He doesn't know what to do with the ball. He's like, "Where's Julio? Where's Calvin?" You just dump it off to Mike Davis. He'll get you 10 yards every time. So I like both of the guys there.
All right, because one of the things is the wide receiver rooms in the NFL. There's a lot of teams that really need a guy to step up. Everyone's going to be wondering, can I play any of these players on these teams? But you got the Jets, the Lions, the Raiders, and the Patriots. None of them really have a true number one wide receiver. They're like, I need to draft him. But from each of those teams, if you had to take one player, who would you pick?
From each of those teams?
So let's say on the clock, pick a Jets receiver.
I don't even know a relevant Jets receiver on the team, to be honest.
So my gut would say I'd still want to go with Jamison Crowder because he's the target monster for PPR.
I guess that's like the only really option there. Like Rashad Perriman was like kind of relevant when he was there.
So now it's like you got Corey Davis, Keelan Cole, Mims, and Crowder out of those four.
I like Mims too, actually, but I'd probably go Crowder just because he's the most consistent.
All right, the Lions, Tyrell Williams, Rashad Perriman, and I don't even know who would be their number 3.
Again, just terrible. Probably Rashad Perriman, though.
Would you feel confident playing Rashad Perriman in your flex?
Probably, yeah. I would say that.
The Raiders, Ruggs, John Brown, Zay Jones. Who are you going to pick out of those 3?
John Brown is definitely the guy. He was the number 1 receiver on the Bills before Stephon Diggs came in, and he was pretty good that season. He just got hurt last year, so I think he still continues to produce. He'll definitely have the best stats out of all the Raiders, but then again, do I feel confident drafting him? No, but I think he'll still be the best Raider.
Okay. Patriots, Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, N'Keal Harry, Jacoby Myers.
That's just terrible.
It's
just so bad.
If I had to close my eyes and play someone, I'd go
Jacoby Myers probably.
It's like I want to say Jacoby Myers from the back of my mind. It says, but Nelson Aguilar. But it's like halfway through the season, who's throwing the ball? To be honest,
it's just not great. Let's just no. We're gonna move on.
We're gonna move on.
Let's talk about the tight ends though.
The tight ends. That's next. The guys who have more of a chance to kind of make a bigger splash: Jared Cook on the Chargers, Tyler Higbee on the Rams, T.J. Hawkinson on the Lions. Who are you feeling confident with out of those 3?
I like Hawkinson still. I think Hawkinson's good. I think that Goff is going to cry when he's getting blitzed 24/7, doesn't know what to do, just needs to dump it off to T.J. Hawkinson, who's probably the only relevant receiver on
Exactly. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Like, even though T.J. Hawkinson gets a downgrade in quarterback, the fact that Marvin Jones is gone, Kenny Galladay is gone, there's going to be targets that need to be filled. They're going to go to Hawkinson.
Yeah, I think Hawkinson just stays at the same level as he always been. I don't think you really see the decrease in value.
So, as always, some of our final remarks. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share. It's never too early to start working towards the next year. I'd say if you really wanted to know your fantasy stuff, this is probably the best year to really, or best time of year to really make sure you can get the lay of the land, what teams are doing, where players are falling. Follow the news every few weeks. It helps to know where guys are going, especially if they're going to be fantasy relevant or not. Just kind of if backfields change, if wide receiver rooms change. If someone makes a last-second trade or drafts a player, it could change up the fantasy value of your guys from the year before. Brian, do you have any final words?
No. I mean, we got the NFL draft coming up soon, so we should know a little bit more when that happens. Until then, keeping up with the news and keep watching out for those Deshaun Watson, those takes that he's got over there.
Exactly. You just got to follow those news on Mr. Watson. But as always, cheers, Brian.
Cheers.